In a short while, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu will deliver a live television address to the nation. It's expected the president will discuss his decision to end a petrol subsidy regime, which has led to soaring food and petrol prices. Ahead of the address, the governor of Nigeria's northeastern state of Adamawa has declared a 24-hour curfew following the looting of food stores and warehouses in the state capital, Yola. Now, for more on the president's address, we can now speak to Arise political editor and director of news, Sambo, who joins me now live in the studio here in Abuja. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, the time takes and very soon the president will be speaking. But again, leading up to this live address call, what do you think would have prompted the president to quickly come to say he wants to speak to Nigerians?
Well, the proposed strike by the labor unions in the country, specifically the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, which are the two major labor centers in the country, is something that will definitely make the president have some sleepless nights. Because if this happens and then it hits together with what we are seeing with people looting warehouses, looting shops in the northeastern state of Adamawa because people are hungry due to the issues of palliatives are not being readily made available to people to cushion the effects of the fuel subsidy removal, then of course the problem would eventually spread across the country, and of course it's a huge challenge that the government cannot afford. The president is still enjoying his honeymoon period, which will definitely end between 90 to 100 days in power, but I can tell you that the signs we're seeing across the country is not so good, and that's why you see some subnational governments like Lagos State is also beginning to work towards ushering in immediate palliatives. They're cutting the cost of buses, bus fares and all of that. And even President Tinubu himself, just earlier in the morning, announced a new regime for students in the country where they will be given more buses, student unions and all of that, so as to reduce the challenges that they have to that they are currently facing since the removal of subsidy. And he's also directed that some of the universities, polytechnics and all of that should cut back on the announcement of new tuition fees and all of that, so as to allow people to see how they can gain some sort of momentum before all of these problems keep coming at once. And then of course he has called for the release of grains to not just student bodies, several states and all of that. So some of these measures are being put in place and may likely culminate in this address of him trying to say that, look, we're working towards preventing a nationwide strike by the labor unions.
Somna, you've raised a very important point here. What we're seeing now in Adamawa State could have a domino effect in other states, because that was how it started during the NSARS when people started looting shops. And is it because it's a case of putting the cart before the horse? That's what some other analysts are saying. What do you think the president and other subnational governments can do to quickly stem the tide of the dissentiment we're seeing across the country?
Well, the president's policies were right on time. But the only challenge that I had with these policies, the removal of the fuel subsidy, and then of course the unification of the exchange rate, is that there was no so much thinking as to providing the the sort of palliatives we are talking about now. People are going into palliatives, and it looks like there's still no thinking, Suleiman, because if you look at it now, you've removed fuel subsidy, and now you're providing transportation subsidy again. Isn't there a problem there? You're cutting the cost of transportation. You're cutting the cost of bus fares and all of that. That is also a form of subsidy. So it looks like there's no deliberate thinking as to what exactly Nigerians need at this time. So if there was a very good thinking before the policy was eventually removed, it could have really helped the government away from this problem, because what I had thought that they would do was to remove the fuel subsidy but delay the issues of the unification of the exchange rate, because they go together. As the price of crude oil at the international price that eventually affects the local sale of petrol price in the country. So why wouldn't President Tinubu have just stopped at just the fuel subsidy removal and see how things go and then by then his cabinet would have been put in place. Then before he now goes into the second hand of the unification of the exchange rate, because they now go together. And what's happening now is that we are beginning to see some sort of arbitrage being reintroduced to the naira, like about 100 naira. The I&E window, I mean, it's like about 800 and something naira from a naira to a dollar. But in the actual sense, if you go to the market out there, it's almost like the naira is supposed to be about 900 naira to a dollar. So it looks like there's still some sort of subsidy again that's still being introduced, about 100 naira, to bridge the gap of the naira to dollar, so that the naira does not get to 1,000 naira to a dollar. So all of this that we are seeing are some sort of subtle subsidies being brought back again. So then why were we now in a rush to remove these subsidies? Subsidy on naira and subsidy on petrol, because we are reintroducing subsidy through the back door. Food subsidies, another one that's coming up again with the discharge of grains and all of that. That means we are not allowing the so-called market forces to determine the market.
So quickly here, does it now make sense, on those who argue that the president should have actually gone ahead to find those who were actually, hijacking subsidies meant for the everyday Nigerian instead of taking off subsidy entirely?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of taking off the subsidy itself, on petrol specifically, it's a very good one. Everybody was tired of this rhetoric that subsidy must go, it must go, and all of that. But yeah, the prosecution of those people is very important. And I'm one of those people who also believe that before the removal of the first subsidy, we would have done all of that so as to actually have a view. I mean, the new government should have had a view as to what exactly the subsidy is all about in the first 6 months. Though the then government of Muhammadu Buhari had, through the budget, removed subsidy. But if I were this government, I think maybe for 3 months or 6 months, I would have seen to a way to manage it, so that I'll use our opportunity to understand what exactly is happening there, and then eventually I will remove it, or I'll remove only that of the petrol and leave that of the currency arbitrage, or I'll look for something else. But it's such a huge challenge that, like I said, a new dimension is being introduced. That's the issue of providing food subsidy to people now. Grains, providing meals on the streets for Nigeria. That's not what Nigerians need. Nigerians need a conducive atmosphere to be able to feed themselves and work and make the economy grow. So if we are moving from petrol subsidy to currency subsidy and then food, then it means we are in a big trouble ahead.
Sambo, many thanks for speaking with us.